Impact of Influence.
Covering true crime throughout the Southeast.
But as far as them getting divorced, that was like an ongoing joke in the house about her divorcing Alec and marrying Tom Brady because she had a thing for Tom Brady.
That is the voice of Blanca Simpson, who you maybe remember from the Murdoch trial, housekeeper and friend of the Murdochs, and author of a new book. Full interview coming up in just a few moments. Hello, friend. Matt Harris and Seton Tucker, always grateful you're going to spend time with us. And as always, you can join in the conversation
On Facebook at Impact of Influence and also on our YouTube channel.
Really grateful for the YouTube numbers jumping up. When you get there, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Well, this interview we're going to break down to 2 episodes. We talked a long time with Blanca and her co-author. The book is Within the House of Murdoch, Amid a Unique Friendship, Blanca and Maggie. And we'll be talking with Blanca about her relationship with the Murdochs.
If you really want to have a true inside perspective of what was going on in the Murdoch household, she's the one to talk to. Interestingly, we talk a little bit at our part 2 of this interview about her consulting on the recent Hulu series that came out. And I watched it and I found the sets that she consulted on very impressive. It's exactly what I've seen from pictures of the Murdoch home.
We're also going to be joined by Fran Weaver, who helped her with the book as well.
Co-author.
And we've broken it up into a couple different sections. In this first section, it's going to be mainly dealing with her relationship with the Murdochs, particularly Maggie, and the background there. And certainly a side of Maggie you may not have ever heard about. We will deal with that. And then in the second episode, we will get into the actual day of the murders, her testimony, things that she thinks may or may not have happened. That'll all be in episode 2. And also want to invite you at the end of this episode, we've got more of a Murdoch update adjacent.
Yes. I mean, I absolutely found this interview with Blanca very fascinating because we really just haven't heard a lot about who Maggie was as a person. And she's really the first person I've heard be able to kind of give us that.
And you may not even have heard the side of Paul. I mean, she loved this family, and you'll hear more about that in this episode. Enjoy. And let's get into the interview. Bring on these folks that you've been talking to for a little while now about this interview we're about to do in the book that's coming out.
Well, we have Fran Weaver. She is the co-author with Blanca Simpson of a new book they have coming out about the whole Murdoch tragedy.
The book is called Within the House of Murdoch, Amid a Unique Friendship, Blanca and Maggie. Blanca, I'm going to get this right, Turrubiante Simpson. Close?
That's close.
Give it to me,
close.
Blanca. What is it?
Turrubiate.
There you go. So, Blanca, you guys, how long have you been working on the book? We'll start with that.
It's been a little over a year.
And I think we should start with the big question that people have, other than obviously the big question, is Bubba.
Bubba's doing well. He had a little, he's had some setbacks. Of course, he's older. He's not completely blind, but that's the reason every time you've seen me with him, I have a leash on him because I can no longer allow him to, wander off, only in the house.
We know Bubba from the Murdoch trial. Bubba was in the snippet with Paul that showed that Alec was at the kennel, and Bubba was the one that grabbed the chicken.
Chicken or guinea.
Guinea.
I don't know. Was it ever determined if it was a chicken or a
It
guinea?
was a chicken.
And so
it was
then,
a chicken.
Obviously, the Bubba needed a home, and Blanca stepped up to take on the mothering of Bubba. Or, Bubba's even older than most dogs, right? Bubba's hanging in there, but a little rough. But Bubba was with the Murdoch family and you for years and years and years.
Yes. Bubba I remember when they got him as a puppy, and they sent him to training for like 16 weeks or something like that. so that he would stop being a little stubborn, because he was a little stubborn as a puppy. But they sent him away, and then I was gone for the 3-4 years that I was gone, away from the family, and I came back, and it's like he still had it out for me. He was still he knew Miss Gloria Satterfield. He knew that Miss Gloria didn't really like dogs coming near her or anything. So the dogs knew. So Bubba, when he saw me coming back, it's like, oh, there goes my friend right there. And he started taking it out on me afterwards. So he would bump me and just playful.
Right.
And it's like I had never really left out of his sight. And he's been, like I said, he's had some really, I had some really rough times with him in the beginning. I thought it was seizures, but it wasn't seizures. It turned out that he was just having like nightmares in his sleep.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And now I had some issues with him that I thought were major health problems. Every time I would leave him to go to Miss Fran so we could write the book. And the first time I went out, they tested him. Everything came back normal or whatever. He just had some minor gastrointestinal. Then this last time that I was gone away from him, I ended up having to cut it short and come back because he got sick.
Wow.
So when I made it back, I took him in, and they told me now he has been diagnosed with separation anxiety.
Oh gosh.
He makes himself sick.
Wow.
So I can only probably leave for like 2 days at the most, and then I have to come back because he just can't. He makes himself sick.
Well, we'll get into more of your relationships with the Murdoch family. We want to talk about the Hulu special first.
Oh, well, no, I want to talk about their book first. I want to ask Fran, how did y'all hook up and decide to write this book?
That question everyone asks us, because it's a very interesting story how we came together and became friends. I'm a good friend of Dr. Michelle Dupree, and during the trial, she and I met. We talked a lot. She lives here in Chapin, about the trial, and I'd sent her several things that I've written from the trial, and she said, "Fran, you should write a book." I'm like, okay, yeah, I'd love to. But I was mostly interested in the victims of these horrible crimes, how they were doing, what was happening with them. And to be very honest, I didn't get a good response from anyone in the Hampton area. They didn't want to talk, except when I called Blanca, and she said, "When can we meet?" So Michelle and I met her for lunch, and the lunch lasted hours, and we talked and talked, and we formed this relationship, I think, of real trust and teamwork, and it blossomed from that. It was almost like an immediate fit for all three of us.
And Michelle was called. I want to go back up and let them know that Dr. Michelle Dupree is a coroner, a former coroner.
Right.
We've had her on the show a couple of times.
And she reviewed, I believe, the Stephen Smith case. She reviewed autopsy findings or was involved in the second autopsy of Stephen.
Yes.
She was.
So I just want to give a little background who you're referring to.
Sure.
So you got together with her and Blanca, and everybody just got along.
It was a great fit. Michelle had to so much on her calendar, and she had to move to Florida temporarily. So we went onward, Blanca and I. Like we were feeling in the dark our way, and we used her whenever we needed her. And I just really admired Blanca, what she's been through. It was an emotional experience, if I may share that. It was very cathartic for her, and sometimes we would get together to write, and we didn't write a word. We just talked and talked and cried and talked and laughed about Maggie, and that's how it all came together.
And so you say you've been working on it like a year, so it's been like 3 years after. And Blanca, what gave you the strength, or because I would imagine there was a lot of people asking you to do something. I would guess. what finally was the moment or the time, why that you decided, okay, now I'm going to do it?
Initially, I wasn't thinking about this. I was still trying to deal with what was going on because I just kind of like secluded myself. Because at this point, being a small town, you don't know what people's angle is they approach you. At that point, even people that I considered, friends or acquaintances, I didn't know what their angle was. I didn't, I I had lost a lot of trust in people, and I just basically dealt with staying home and taking care of Bubba, and that was my main purpose.
And grieving,
And
grieving the
then,
loss of friends and
yes,
family. Yep.
I would go to the cemetery, I would change out her flowers, I would clean it up, I would, just to kind of keep myself busy, I would take the dog with me. But then I remembered I kept seeing a lot of negative things being said about, you know, not only Paul, but Maggie as well, and a lot of ugly remarks that were being made of about Maggie.
And
And
that's really interesting because you're the only person who has written a book. There's been a lot of books who actually had a really intimate relationship with the family.
Or I'd say even given an interview about Maggie. I mean, that's been very,
Yeah,
yep, yep.
we attempted to reach out to friends and family, and we were not able to really get anybody
Right.
to,
Tell her.
to tell her story. So I think that this is just going to be something of interest to a lot of people because it's something that has not been told.
Maggie was just Maggie was an incredible woman. She had so much to offer the world still. She had a a love of life, laughter, that loud laughter. She just had so much to offer, and I think people are overlooking that. You know, we're not all perfect people. None of us are. And she never claimed to be perfect. But within that family, there's certain unspoken rules that you must, go by because you represent that family. And I think that had a lot to do with the judgment that was passed on her. But the
When you say
person that I
rules,
knew,
the rules you're talking about, you're talking about the image is what you talk about rules. You talk about, is that what you're talking about? An image that must be portrayed in the
hmm
town and the Murdoch name and such. So I assume that's what you're talking
yes, yes, some people say, well, no, nobody's ever said anything. That's the unspoken rule of the family. You don't discuss, you know, you don't put your business out. Well, a lot of us are like that. I mean, I'm pretty much the same way. I don't, I keep to myself. My
More of a
husband's the
private
same way.
person. More of a private person.
Exactly. And even even Maggie used to tell me that I was a little nerd sometimes, or
about.
that she's like, you're so conservative. And her joke was like, you're so conservative. Um, I can still hear her saying that. And it's like I would always just silly stuff that she would not think of. I'm more of a she would, certain, like if you're going to be doing some kind of whatever type of housework you're going to be doing, of course you're not going to go out there in a mini dress and sandals, to do it. You have to dress appropriate. And that was one of the things that she wouldn't think. And it's not that she was doing it on purpose. It's just she was kooky like that at times. I'd have to get on her. I'm like, did you just do that in a dress? She's like, yeah. I was like, go inside and get dressed. And 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 just a lot of things. Sometimes it was like when the contractors were out there working on the house when they first got to Moselle and they started doing the remodel, she would do some crazy things, and I would always walk out. And I'm like, don't be doing that in front of the contractor. So don't do this, or And she'd be like, I wasn't thinking, but she was already doing. And by that I'm talking about the instant where I think it was on the trial where they said about normal people. What is it about the paint colors? and
Okay.
that he didn't want to hear it. And she was like, "Well, which one do you think?" And she went to Sherwin-Williams and got 8 different small sample cans of white paint and painted the wall right before you walk in through the front door.
She
And
painted it.
when I she painted like she grabbed
Swatches.
a can.
Oh,
She would grab a can and she would put the paintbrush in there. She had 8 paintbrushes, 8 cans of paint,
okay.
and 8 white lines across the right next to the front door. And when I walked out, she was almost done with the last painting the last line to show me. And I looked at her. I'm like, "Did you just bend down? Have you been bending down?" She's like, "Yeah, to paint." And I was like, "What?" I said, "Are you trying to show everybody and I used a different word. And she's like, "No, no, you think?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do think." I said, "Look at what you're wearing." And she wouldn't think. She would just do things out of excitement or whatever. And she was just funny. And she'd be like, I was like, "Get in the house," I said, "and go change and then come back." She's like, "Well, I already painted the wall anyway." She says, "Tell me which one you like." I told her, I said, "Well, they fooled you because to me, they just poured the same white in different cans and just told you it was the same because they
So,
all look the same to me.
how long did you know her for?
I met her I knew of her, but I did not meet her until 2007.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it sounds like she felt like you were one of the few people she could be herself around and you could be yourself around her. She didn't have to put on airs,
In
you know.
in the beginning, when I first, went to the house and she introduced me. She said, "This, hey, ladies, it was Miss Barbara Mixon was there. Of course, Miss Gloria Satterfield. And there was another young lady that worked there. Her name was Nora. And she introduced me. She said, "This is Alex's friend. She's going to be coming here. She's going to be helping out." And that was the first introduction that I had. And shortly after that, it's like I knew things had to get done. And I'm the type of person that when I if I know things got to get done, I just don't like being bothered. I do what I need to do and just to get it done. And
Right.
Well, so
I make my priorities.
Yeah.
you
And
knew
she's
Alex before you knew Maggie. How did you come to meet Alec Murdaugh?
Alex stepped up and helped me when a friend of mine needed an attorney because the attorney that she had hired it was not a good match. It was not, they were not helping her out despite she spoke English, but it was very broken. And um, I think they were asking her to do too many things and she didn't really understand instead of helping her. And so I told her, I said, "I'm going to look around." And of course, when I started asking around and, my husband, being that he grew up in the area, he said, go to the Murdaughs. He said, "Go to the law firm." So I walked in and I can't remember who it was that was in the front desk, but I said, "I need an attorney. I would need to know if somebody can represent." And I gave her a little insight of what was going on. And he stepped out of the office and he's like, "Come on back here." He said, "I'll help you." And of course, I looked at him and I was like, "Oh my gosh," just, because he's tall, red hair, and wad of tobacco in his mouth. And, you know, and at first I was like, "Are you for real?" He's like, "What can I help you with?" And then after that, I told him what happened. He said, "You need to fire." I said, "That's already been done." And he said, "Well, they're going to probably question the fact that she speaks Spanish if you do it." I said, "It's been done in both languages." He's like, "Oh, you can read and write?" I said, "Yes." And I said, "I can speak it too." And he's like, that's what I meant. So, but we went and collected, basically, we terminated that attorney services. I retrieved all the information that she had submitted to that attorney, and then I brought it over to the law firm, and um, that's how me and him got started. He asked me to go to court because there was no bilingual interpreters
Mm.
in Hampton at that time. So when I went to court, I translated. A few months later, she ended up receiving her settlement, and then from that point on, it's like he would he would see you out there or whatever, and he was always very courteous, very nice. "Hey, how are you doing? How's the family doing?" And then the calls started coming if I would help him, with cases, if I could interpret. So that's basically how I got started with him. And the first part, I was working for the state when I first met him, and then I went to the federal prison. So I had a little bit more leeway with the federal
Well, I know
prison.
when we've talked a lot, Paul really had a special place in your heart.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your relationship with Paul?
The first time I met Paul, um, he was probably actually I met Paul before I met Maggie. Paul was a little boy, probably I guess he must have been like 4 or 5 when I first saw him. And the only reason it caught my attention because he was climbing all over his daddy's truck at the Pizza Hut parking lot. And Alex was sitting there hollering at him to get off the truck. And he was a hyper little kid. But he finally came down and he stood right next to Alec. And of course, Alec, being so tall, and he was just a little boy with little red curls. And he was just looking and he was smiling, but he was standing behind his daddy. And then when I started working there, I don't know what it was, but I remember Miss Gloria used to tell me, you need to pay special attention to Paul, pay special attention to Paul. And I was like, that's fine. Whatever the boys wanted, I always felt, because I have kids of my own. So if they wanted anything or if they needed anything, I just did it. It wasn't because I had to, because that was not what I was there for. But Paul was always more attached. And I think when Miss Gloria passed, and I went back, that's when Paul and I actually got a little bit closer.
The Gloria
Yeah.
Satterfield and Paul got along.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
yes. Yes. Miss Gloria would do anything, not only for Paul, but for Maggie, Alec. I mean, and she wasn't the type of person to go out there and tell people I work for Alec Murdaugh or I do this. She went out of her way for them. She really did. And Gloria always used to tell me, take care of him, take care of him. And I did. And he just used to always, you know how they call him the little investigator on the trial?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, he was also a little instigator and a little rambunctious, kind of like Bubba. He would get into things or try to fix things. He would take things apart and then try to put them back together. And if it didn't work, he just used to put it to the side. And it's like, I'm done. Let me go to the next. He was always curious, but he had that, I don't know, he was always very down to earth. He was not, he was never arrogant with me. He was never disrespectful. He was always a clown, doing things, hiding stuff from me, so that I'd have to go and, what did you do with my stuff? Like, oh, I didn't get it. I'm like, I know you did. He's like, okay, let me
He
go
wasn't
get
doing
it.
it in a
He was
mean
little.
way. It was a mean thing.
No,
So,
no,
so
he was.
the description that we hear of Paul is a spoiled, entitled brat. You did not see that side of him.
I saw him being disciplined when he needed to be disciplined. And he was a little hard to handle for Maggie at times. So Alec, you did discipline him when he was younger. I do remember him doing that. But Paul got into a lot of, Paul was just very hyper, very, very hyper. And, he was a little hard to handle at times, but he had a good heart. He would do everything. He would do anything if you asked him, especially like outdoor stuff. If you wanted him to help you with something outdoors or whatever, he would be willing to do it with you or for you. He was just he loved to work. He loved to work. And if he didn't know how to run a piece of machinery, he would learn how to run it.
Now, the tragic boat crash with Mallory Beach, did you see a change in him
I did.
at that time? And what was that change?
When I went back shortly after the boat accident, um, in the beginning he was a little more withdrawn, but when I first went back, it was just Maggie and Alec there in the house. The boys were in Columbia; they were in
College.
college, so it was just Maggie and Alec there. I would see them probably like if they were coming home for the weekends, I would see them, here and there because sometimes they wouldn't come home.
Right.
But towards the end, well, before he passed, I used to see him a lot more often, and he was real enthusiastic about working on the farm. He loved the outdoors. He loved Moselle. Um, he was just he would get into things out there. I know there was one time where Maggie said he jumped off there was a little pier on one of the runoffs that came on the property. And Maggie said, "Can you believe it? He was out there. He caught a baby alligator or something." And she says, "There's alligators in there." And he was like, "Oh, well, I got a baby." I'm like, "You don't think the mama's gonna come after you?" And he was just doing stuff. He was fearless.
Did you sense
He was,
that the family, he and Alec and Maggie, did they ever talk about? Did they feel pain about the Mallory Beach? Did they ever discuss? Did you hear it? Did you feel it, or was that? Did it ever come up?
I I never saw. I'm not gonna sit here and say I never saw any emotion coming from Alec with regard to that, to the case.
Okay.
However, with Maggie, it was different. With Maggie, um, she was very well aware of what had happened, and there was things that she wanted to say, but because of the lawsuits and
Sure.
everything that was going on, she was not allowed. Had she had her chance, she probably would have. She probably would have crossed that line, because she was at that point before she got killed. That
Well,
she wanted to make amends with some people, for some misunderstandings, or for saying some things that might have been taken out, in a different way.
Right.
Mhm.
let me ask you about just the family dynamics in the household. Did you see a lot of fighting between the family members?
No, there was no there. There was disagreements between the boys. Of course, they're young, so
Yeah.
they, of course, they're gonna fight, and they're very very different personalities. Buster's very reserved, um, does not show emotions, but that's his usual self. He's very respectful, and you just had to learn their ways. For some reason, some people call him snobbish. To me, he was just Buster, my Buster, like I called him. But with regard to Paul, I think they stayed on Paul more after the boat accident because they didn't want him to get into trouble. And that was one of Maggie's worries, that he was gonna that somebody was gonna hurt him. Um,
Oh,
that somebody was, they just hated him, and he was getting texts, threatening texts. When we were up there in Columbia that one time we were moving one of the boys into another apartment, and Maggie said that the kids used to come up to the window because Paul stayed in the first floor, and the kids used to come after they parked their vehicles. They would come to the window and they would start hollering, "Are you murderer? You murderer?" And to Paul. So he was putting up. He was going through a lot, and when he would come to Moselle on the weekends and stuff, I think it was kind of like a release for him to be out there, in the basically in the woods, to himself, doing things that he enjoyed.
and working
But
with
he
his
always
uncle,
cared.
and working with his uncle is right during that, right before, that summer before that he was working with
Yeah.
the construction and that.
Well,
Hmm.
what about the relationship between Maggie and Alec? Like, we've heard lots of rumors about divorce and marital strife. Did you witness anything like that?
Um, the only time, I don't know why, oh my God. If you look at your clocks, it's 2:45. I still have not made myself delete. I cannot delete that alarm off my phone. I used to set my alarm for 2:45, snooze it 10 minutes, and then I used to leave Moselle. And I still have it on my phone.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm sorry
No,
about that, but that
no,
I still
that's
have it. I still have it on my phone. I have not deleted it, and it still says pick up Mikey, which is my son. I had it set up like that because I used to leave Moselle and go pick him up at school and then go home.
wow. You probably still have Maggie's phone number in there.
I
Things like
do.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
I do.
So
And
the
and
argument. So
Alex
yeah,
and
Alex.
Alex's phone number and his temporary numbers and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I still have that.
back to the Maggie Alec situation. You said you only one time you saw some tension.
Anytime that if they had ever had an argument or whatever, which I never did see, and I'm not going to say that I did, I would see them fuss back and forth. It was more dealing with the boys, or the boys didn't do this, or you need to tell the boys to do something or whatever. And there was some conflict after the boating accident. Maggie had concerns for people that she knew were not being truthful, or were not being their friends anymore, that they would talk about them. And she would voice her concerns to Alec. And Alec was like, well, they're not doing it to me. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that. He was the type of person that he had to see it in order to believe it. And Maggie would let him know about that. But as far as them getting divorced, that was like an ongoing joke in the house about her divorcing Alec and marrying Tom Brady. Because she had a thing for Tom Brady. So that was just a running joke. I'm going to divorce you and I'm going to marry Tom. And it was just a joke. And the boys used to always joke with her saying, well, I think that'll have a better outcome because Giselle's hot, you know. So that's how all of the divorce thing started, because people were saying that she had gone at a particular time, and that's when she had met up with an attorney. She was with her mother and her sister. They were celebrating, you know, her mother's birthday or something. They were gone. They were out of town. But it wasn't because of an attorney.
Did they seem loving when you would, did you witness
Very much.
loving interactions between them?
Very much. They enjoyed doing things together. Maggie loved being with her mother. Maggie just, she, talking to her sister, you know, almost every day. Her mother, I think she talked to her mother every day as well, about anything. It could be like, how do you, something as simple as, well, do you think I should put the pans on this side of the cabinet or on that side of the cabinet? Little minor stuff like that. But it was something important to her, you know, how to design her house, how to put a painting up, or how to put a piece of art on the wall or whatever. Most of the time she would call her mother and say, hey, can you come and help me? I need some stuff, you know, to do. Her mother was very particular in how to measure things. And I think Maggie was kind of catching on to that as well. She was very particular in how she did things. And they just got along great.
What about the financial situation? You know, we now know that, Alec was stealing money and paying off people. Was Maggie aware that there were some financial difficulties happening?
Maggie, the frustration that came to Maggie was the fact that she was tasked with having to pay contractors. And on top of that, the bills for the house. Other than that, those were the extra things that she had coming out of her account. And she would always say, you know, well, She said, I don't understand why people think I got it all together. I'm always bouncing checks.
So she had her own
So
account?
she did.
Yeah.
Yeah. She had her own account, and Alec used to deposit money into that account.
Okay.
And whenever she needed money for the expenses or whatever, Alec would just deposit. She said Alec does all that. And her understanding was that he had to take it out of investment accounts that they had to put it in her account. But like I said, it took a turn on her when, like I said, it was just a lot of, with dealing with the contractors. I know it ended up getting to her because having to pay the contractors at the end of the week. And then she was being made responsible for how many workers were there, how many hours they worked, how much they were going to each get paid. And she was, instead of the contractor handling that, it was Maggie doing that. So it got kind of frustrating for her because we actually sat down when Maggie and Paul were killed. Maggie and I had just started going over a lot of the finances, what was going on, what was coming in, because she was frustrated with the fact that she was paying this money to this contractor for referrals for the subcontractors that would come there. And she says, I don't know. She said, she didn't really care too much for the guy. And she thought that some of the things were kind of off, the way that they were doing. But she's like, well, we picked him, we got to deal with this. And we sat down and we literally were sitting down and going through all the checks written, all the money that was out. While she was reading it out, either she had the bank statement or I had the invoice or vice versa, but we were kind of lining out stuff in the, dealing with the finances. But it wasn't because she knew something was off. It was more dealing with the minor details of having to pay paying these contractors. Another thing that was said about that was that it was something about her credit cards or something like that.
Oh, you like at a charity
Maggie,
function? There was something about that at a charity function.
That was a bounce check.
Bounce check, and then
I mean, the way she put it to me is, people think I have it all together, but I bounce checks all the time.
But she didn't think it was because Alec was taking money. She just thought she
she was mismanaging, or she had forgot to pay a bill.
Okay.
Which she often did. She decided at one point that she was going to be getting she was going to get all her bills through email, and that would make it easier. She ended up forgetting to pay bills. I know there was one time they went to Edisto and she forgot to pay the cable bill. I know another time she said she forgot to pay the electric bill. So it was just too much on her. So she said, no, put it back on paper. Send me the bills because I can't handle it like that.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't that she was not aware. Yeah. Anytime she needed money, Alec would deposit the money in her account or give her cash if she was going out of town.
What about the drugs? We've heard that Alec had this severe opioid addiction. Did you witness anything that would lead you to believe that was true?
I first found out in 2007. And that was when they were going through their difficulty with some infidelities or whatever. I didn't ask any questions. I just know that she was uncomfortable with a certain individual that, the girlfriend of that individual. And the drugs that I had found, if she would have seen that, I know that it would have been, she would have automatically known who the individual was, because she was very uncomfortable with that person. And Alec had called me and asked me, did you tell her about it? I was like, I didn't say anything. I just put it in the cup. And to elaborate a little bit on the cup, in the laundry room, anytime that I did laundry, they always have a habit of leaving not only money, but lighters, bullets, vapes when they got older. wallets. I know, I don't know. I can't tell you how many times I wash wallets because I didn't check the pockets. But I used to have a cup above in the cabinet above the washer and the dryer. And I used to just put the stuff in there. Well, this day that was the first time I found something and I put it in the cup. I don't know how he saw it in there. I don't know how that came about. Maggie did not know. I just assumed, somebody dropped it and I just put it in the cup. And when he called me and asked me if I had told Maggie, I said no. He said, well, please don't say anything. And I was thinking, I said, you know what? If she doesn't ask me, I'm not going to say anything. But if she asks me, I'm not going to keep that from her. I'm not going to do that. There was other incidents when they were moving out of Holly Street, where I found a bigger stash, and I did tell him about it. I just put it to the side, in a cup.
But did
At Moselle.
you think he had a problem, or did you think that maybe, at least to the degree, what did you think? That he was just maybe possibly just doing when he had pain? I mean, I'm just trying to what dots were you connecting?
When I found the big stash, the first time I didn't really think nothing of it because I just assumed they had a habit of putting, in the beginning, I did not know. And I would find they had a habit of putting like their medicine in clear bags for some reason. Anytime they went anywhere, they always had their medicine in a clear sandwich bag. It doesn't make sense to me, but that's just the way that they did
I've seen
it.
people do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way that they did. So I just assumed it was, either what is it, Loratadine allergy medication, the little tablets, the Loratadine or whatever it's called. Yeah. I just assumed it was that. I didn't realize because the kids were always having allergy problems and all that. So I'd never questioned it. When I got suspect of that was with I think it was more towards once the boating accident. I think about a year before Maggie and Paul were killed is when I started. He was just like real jittery, real short, but his demeanor changed even more 2 months before, where he was tired all the time, but he was constantly on the go. His daddy was sick, and I think that's when he started abusing them more. And there was products in the bathroom that, kind of
laxatives or something, because I think when you're on opioids, you get a little bit.
Yeah. There was products that could tell that he was. You could tell that something was going on.
When you said earlier, I know you don't want to talk about the specifics of it, but what affair you didn't ask about, but I'm guessing that the person that Maggie was suspicious of, she was also suspicious that person was giving Alec drugs.
Yes.
Okay. And then that
she would associate me.
Yeah. And that circle, whatever that circle was problematic for Maggie.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was.
Yeah.
She knew. Maggie knew when women approached him in a certain way. I mean, as women, I guess all women, you kind of know when there's a motive or you haven't, that sort of thing. She knew. There were certain people she did not like or care for because she felt that they had other intentions. And she kind of, you can feel the vibe. You can kind of tell.
Like a little flirty, maybe?
Yeah. And some of them would just be a little too flirty, and it was all, it was said that it was in good fun or, nothing, it's just friendly and all that. But you could tell, you could see it. It was Alex Murdaugh, the Murdaugh family.
It's not necessary that he was following through with all these people, but people were flirting with him.
The flirtations were there.
Yeah.
The flirtations were there. And I think certain people, certain women made her uncomfortable. And I'm not going to go into names because I know a few of them. I know a few of them, and I know what they did, how they flirted. I know things that were said, and I know of some confrontations that came about, with them. But through it all, I mean, she tried to hold that, her marriage came first. She loved him. She did love him.
She trusted him to some degree, but she might have thought he was having an affair, but probably not with every single person that was flirting with him. Right.
No, I think she kind of, in 2007, I know that's when that went around with, the affair or whatever, when that happened, or a little bit before then, somewhere around there. Because you could see a little tension, and you could see when I first started there, I think one of the things I noticed was that when I would call her and say, hey, I'm on my way, she would like, well, Alex in the bed, don't, can you come a little later? So it's like she was a little uncomfortable. But then shortly after, when she got to know me or whatever, she, in her way, she's like, oh, girl, he's asleep. Just close the door.
Yeah.
She changed. But I didn't go into that home to be a home wrecker, or to, with other motives. And that was never, that thought never even crossed my mind. They were just good people. And I respected her, and I respected her husband as well. And that thought never even crossed my mind. I mean, when you work for somebody, or when you have a friend, you, as far as me and the way that I was raised, is you don't cross that line.
Did you ever meet Eddie during any of this time? Eddie Smith?
The first time I saw Eddie Smith was when it was in July. I would have to go back and look at the photographs. The first time I met him was when they came on the property at Moselle to pick up the big bulldozer that was around the back. They pulled up with a big 18-wheeler, and there was a blue Ford truck that pulled up, and the guy was bringing it around the back, from the back of the house. It was to the side, on that back road. And he was driving it to the front. Alec had sent me a text and said that somebody named Smith was coming. I think he said Kevin. I don't know. I have his name on my phone. But that he was coming to get the high boy. That's what they call them, the machine. So when I was at the store, and I remember I pulled up and I heard the noises, and I was like, wait a minute, I got the gate locked. What's going on? So I drove around the backside and I pulled up on him. That's the first time I met Mr. Eddie Smith that day. When they were taking that equipment. That was after the murders.
I never after the murders. Okay.
Yeah, that was after the murders that I saw him. And then I saw him again at Walmart. I saw him at after, I guess he had been, because I know he was charged and he was in jail for a while, but he was out.
House arrest for a bit,
I guess. Yeah. And I ran into him at Walmart, and he talked to me for a few minutes, and we went on our way. He's a tall man, I can tell you that. But then again, I'm short.
So we will have in our next episode, part 2 of our interview with Blanca, where we get into the day of the murder, her testimony, and some things that may have been missed in the investigation. But first, there's an update on Murdoch-related news.
Yes, disgraced banker Russell Lafitte has been sentenced to 8 years in prison plus a 5-year suspended time sentence by the state of South Carolina. Now, as with the federal sentence, Lafitte will get credit for the time he has already served. He was in jail while this was all happening. And it will run concurrently with the 5-year federal sentence. He's also been sentenced to 350 hours of community service. He's expected to serve his time in federal prison, which I'm sure he is happy about. Eric Bland, who is the attorney for some of the victims, has said that he is not satisfied with the sentence. He says that Lafitte has never apologized to the victims. Lafitte's counsel expressed that he believed that the plea deal was a fair resolution. Now, Lafitte did not address the court during this sentencing hearing. He let his lawyers do the talking. Prosecutor Creighton Waters, who is currently running for AG, says that he intends to monitor the community service to make sure that it, quote, means something. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but, probably monitor, make sure he does all of his time. And
he's not just mailing it in as, some friend is just checking off the box.
Exactly. Now, we also had a few comments on our episode with Steve Federico, who is Logan Federico's father. She was the young woman who was tragically killed by a career criminal in Columbia, South Carolina. Judy says on our Facebook page, keep fighting. These monsters need to be kept in jail. We need to hound our DAs and judges.
Good point.
Also a comment from Kevin. He sent this by messenger to us.
Okay.
I'll let you read it.
Let me read it. Hi, Matt and Seton. Big fan of the podcast. Thank you. In fact, I've been a Matt Harris fan. Oh, Kev, thanks. From the time he hit the airwaves in Charlotte. Yeah, I do a radio show, for those who don't know, on 107.9. He goes on to say, I've thought about writing several times, mostly support you on the bias issue. People are ridiculous. Any impartial ear could hear that you have gone out of your way to not only present both sides, but also be very clear that you were doing so and not commenting in a way to undermine that. So thanks for doing such a good job. However, what got me to create this message was the episode today with Steve Federico. My heart aches for him and his family over the loss of his daughter. It's a horrifying event, and there really aren't words to express the sorrow it brings. Now, there's no good way to seg from that, so I will just say the idea that a solution to, quote, this problem is more prisons so more people can serve longer sentences leaves me absolutely cold. And rehabilitating criminals has never worked because we've never actually tried to rehabilitate anyone. I don't want criminals on the street, and I know that there are irredeemable people out there, but we do nothing to separate redeemable from irredeemable. So under this plan, I trust our justice system to lock up a lot of redeemable people for a lot longer than they deserve. Also, I'll throw this in, talking down the politics angle and then saying we know who's soft on crime is kind of out of bounds and inaccurate. But I love you guys and keep doing the show. I love it. Keep up the good work. Yeah, all good points.
Fair points for sure. I think there is definitely some work to be done with the criminal justice system. I also have always thought about people who are sentenced and then they come out and they probably have a difficult time finding employment. I mean, my 23-year-old is having a difficult time finding employment.
But
so
let alone if you have a record.
Let alone if you have a record and you're trying to support yourself, and also, the mental health system. It's a complicated issue, and I don't think there is an easy answer. We may need more prisons. We may need more access to mental health care or mental health facilities. And
a
also,
way to separate redeemable from
irredeemable. I think all of these things need to happen.
And violent from nonviolent, and mental issues. And,
right. Don't lock somebody up for 10 years because they, had a bag of marijuana
or stole food
or stole food from
I'm
not saying that you should do any of those things. I'm just saying
no.
There's a very big difference from the man who killed Logan Federico, who had many offenses, almost 40 times. That's a big difference from somebody who, shoplifted or something along those lines.
And yes, it is complicated, and he is right that the soft on crime thing, it is not that clear cut. They're just different theories on what to do.
But they're good conversations to have,
yes,
and
I
it's
agree.
good awareness for people to talk about these things. So hopefully we can change it, and tragedies like Logan don't happen again.
Yeah. We're part of the Evergreen podcast company and support our sponsors like Quince and Mint Mobile. Just bought some Quince, some socks, and a comforter.
I bought some new glasses for my house.
Oh,
And I'm
like
very
drinking
excited.
glasses.
Yes, because we had this whole big mismatched set, and I was just it was driving me crazy. I was like, I want matching glasses, and I found the prettiest ones on Quince.
Nice. There you go. We're always grateful. Hit the YouTube channel, hit the Facebook page, and we will talk soon, friend.